So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and it is a rather dank and dismal looking day on, I think it's MISTRAND actually, just having a cursory glance around the map, although it has been given a bit of a Mordor makeover since the last time we saw it, so it should be quite interesting to see how MISTRAND performs here. I have to say I'm a little concerned because I think these fences here are part of the problem that was sort of contributing quite heavily to how my game was crashing, which doesn't exactly fill me with too much confidence. But as we move forward, this was a good map to watch previously, and this replay was simply called Chaos in the replays file, so I'm expecting big things of it, we shall say. But it is going to be a 3v5, so the evil forces over here are going to be on the attack, and we shall start off with them, I think, starting off with, well, he's not actually the one on the side, is he? This is going to be Agalar Galudithon, who is going to be playing as Dunland. So Dunland are going to be rearing their ugly heads once again in support of their evil masters. Dunland is, of course, not, like I've said before, it's not exactly the most well-rounded faction, because it's not one that you're intended to play, so your options are very much limited. They only have 2 units that are completely unique to them and pretty damn good. The rest of them are made up of the sort of lower end of the spectrum, Dunland and Rudour units, the Dunmen units. Speaking of which, Dunman Spearmen here on the front line. Just in behind them, he does have some Isengard units to pick from as well. The Half-Orc Baneguard, obviously decent shock troops in comparison to the other Isengard shock troops. They are the toughest in melee, but they're also the fewest in number. Just in behind them, we have a big clump of Dunland clansmen, but also hidden in there we have the Greenway Guards, which are the unique foot-based unit that Dunland have available to them. Very, very strong crossbowmen, actually, mixed with those shields and spears that they utilise as well. Very, very good unit all round, especially against cavalry, to be honest with you, which makes sense considering what Dunland are all about. Lots of Dunland clansmen, and then just in behind we have the other unique unit, which is of course a mounted variant of their guards, the Greenway Sentries, which of course very much the same thing, only on horseback. Then, moving further forwards, we have a much more well-rounded faction. Y2K86 is going to be playing as Rudour. We have some Coldfell Maidens here next to the very dark backdrop of this ground here. I hope that the brightness is okay for YouTube. But of course, Javelin Cavalry, very, very useful for dealing with other units of cavalry. We shall see if the defenders, in this case, have any cavalry they can use. A lot of Rudour Swordsmen as well, not too surprising because they're relatively cheap and relatively effective for what they offer. We also have quite a few units of a few units of Dunmen, including some Hunters and some Spears, some Rudour Clansmen as well, and also some Rudour Marksmen. So a largely, excuse me, my voice is still constantly on the verge of dying, it seems. But yeah, Rudour, they can have a lot of hidden units, but what we can see is all fairly basic, to be honest. Then, a little bit further back, the player who sent me the battle replay, we have Orc, who's going to be playing as Mordor. He has a huge clump of units, including Orc Archers, Orc Javelins, several units of Trolls. We have Troll Catapults. We have in there somewhere some Minas Morgul Chosen. He has the Adunheim Lancers with their green Minas Morgul inspired capes, and a lot of Morannon units, including halberds and infantry as well. But you know what to expect from Mordor. They rarely change their tactics. They're always going to be based around numbers and sprinkling in a fair amount of high quality in there as well. Very strong high-end units for Mordor. Then we have Son of Durin, who's going to be playing as Mirkwood, a couple of units of the Spears of Emenduir, some Hiriak and some Hiri Auth in there as well. We have some Hiri Pang. We'll see how well they can perform in the cramped environments of the city. Elven King's Palace Guard, obviously a really, really strong unit of infantry. Elders of the Elven King, and then finally some Sindar of the Girdle as well. The final attacking army in this case, we have another faction of Dunland played by Sharkan. He has got some Half-Orc Spear Guard, some Gwathlo Trackers in there as well, which is actually a unit they share with Cardland rather than Rudour or Isengard. Trollshaw Axe Throwers are actually a very useful unit for them to have access to. Dunman Pikemen. Of course, we've got the Greenway Guards as well as some Black Walls hidden in there as well, but for the most part it's very much the same sort of thing, only more of an emphasis around their Dunlanders rather than some of their units that they share with Isengard. Then, moving on, we have Imladris, played by Total War Number 1. So, Imladris is a faction which some people have been wanting to see a little bit more of lately, so hopefully I can provide that, providing this replay doesn't crash consistently and I have to bin it. That would be a real shame, but I think we're past that point now, I hope. A couple of units of Eldarenway Archers here, very high-end archers, going into the red limit on them actually. We also have some Eldarenway Spearmen, 2 units of Eldarenway Spearmen as well, 3 units, so going into the red limit again, as well as some Eldarenway Lancers out on the flank just in behind, some Imladris Guardians and some Eldarenway Swordmasters. So going into the red limit on a lot of these Eldarenway, to be honest with you, which is playing with fire a little bit. We'll see if Imladris can make the most of their very high tier army though. Obviously being outnumbered, they could afford to go into the red limit for some stuff, maybe not all. Then we have Rohan, played by Master Blaster. He's got some Westmark Spearmen with some Westmark Infantry just in behind, as well as some Westmark Marshals, some Helm's Hammers and some Medicelled Guard. The rest of his forces probably in here. So based on the kind of map it is, I would expect less cavalry from Rohan. Riddermark Skirmishers are here, but their javelins are going to be useful no matter what. Well, I say less cavalry from Rohan. We have Red Shields, we have First Marshal's Bodyguard and another unit of Red Shields, so going into the red limit on them as well. And do we have more Rohirrim cavalry back here? We do. The Arid of Aldberg and a lot of Riders of the Fold. So yeah, actually a lot of cavalry. We've seen Master Blaster try this in a very similar way on a rather similar map actually in terms of structure quite recently, and it didn't work out for him. So we'll see if it does today. And then the final defender we have over here, Rune, played by Paladin. So Rune and Mirkwood have kind of switched sides, as it were. Rune fighting on the forces of good, Mirkwood on the forces of evil. But he has got some Flag Rim, some Eastron crossbows, some Scion Rim once again, Flag Rim, and some Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. Very good to see them, obviously, with how effective they can be. Dragon's Breath, we've seen how devastating that can be also. Gnar Rim, Gamp Rim, more Gnar Rim, and there's also some more Flag Rim in there as well as the Carmel's Chosen. So, without further ado, let's begin. See how this new Mordor makeover suits this map. There's a little bit of a lag going on here right at the start, but I would imagine that will abate fairly soon into the battle itself. The sounds of a bustling market, even though no one is there. MISTRAND itself, though, is very much a battle that's going to be based around its fighting in the streets, because while you can go around the settlement to an extent, it's going to be very unlikely that anyone's going to be able to take full advantage of that. Total War number 1 is going to head off in this direction, but I don't really know what he hopes to accomplish, because I think this is the only part of the settlement where, well, I mean, I suppose you can go right the way around and try and go up this way, although I've never seen this part of the map actually utilised before. But it does look as though you can go, indeed you can go right the way around, but no one ever does that, I don't think, because it takes so long to actually get there. And indeed, I think Total War number 1 is actually going to turn around now and go up the far more... Actually, there's also even more Rohirrim cavalry over here, a lot of Eastmark Riders and Riddermark cavalry. But he's going to take the more conventional route up into the city to try and link up with Rohan right away. And it is also worth saying as well that Rohan are going to need support almost immediately here, because while this fight, I'm sure it will be very chaotic based just on the replay's name, Rohan are the ones in the city which probably suits them the least. Certainly they don't have enough infantry to hold the city down, and if the attackers are quick, they can overwhelm Rohan very, very fast, and then they can just sort of wall up and make sure that Rohan's cavalry cannot be used effectively, and that just leaves having to fight Rune and Imladris. Strong as they may be, they would not be able to take on 5 armies of this size and scale. But we shall see how that goes, and we can actually see as well that Rune, turning around by the looks of things, are instead going to go around this way. I'm not sure why the lag is so prevalent in this battle already. Nothing's even happened yet, and again, like, the game has had me really on edge lately. I think I fixed it, but I have to say I'm not entirely convinced based on this start alone. Some Carmel's Dragon Knights are also going to retreat, and they're going to go back around this way, so they're probably going to try and link up together, but again, I'm not entirely sure how the defenders here are going to hold on to the city, because they do need to hold this ground in the middle of the city if they're going to have any chance at all, because if they are forced to try and besiege this settlement from the outer parts of the cliffs, there's no way that they win this battle. They simply do not have the numbers. They may have a lot of quality, but there's no way that they can fight their way through this many, especially when you consider it's one Mordor army and 2 Dunland armies, which are going to be incredibly numbers focused. Dunland, simply because they don't have any elites with which to spend their money on, really. You can see here Shah Khan already moving into position, the Dunman hunters already going to start trying to spray down the Rohirrim forces that are moving toward them. But also the Rohirrim, of course, not exactly the most well-armoured of the Western Kingdoms of Man, one of the least armoured, in fact. Not to say they don't have their heavily armoured units, of course. Westmark Spearmen with their shields and their scaled armour, probably one of the better units for the Rohirrim for taking arrow fire, but still, they certainly aren't up to the level of like a Gondor when it comes to absorbing a lot of pressure. Westmark infantry moving forwards as well. There are some Riddermark skirmishers. Those javelins will come in mighty handy The main problem that I can see for Rohan, though, is also rather bad fortune for them, is that Mirkwood are going to be one of the factions they're going to have to deal with front and centre, which means they can't even rely on their quality here, really. Because if they do, the elves are going to be able to overpower the men of the Mark. But from a numbers perspective as well, they're so woefully outgunned here. And I do wonder, I mean, I would assume there's some sort of rules of engagement, where as soon as someone sort of lands the first blow, that's when all hell will start to break loose. But when all hell does start to break loose, I don't see how Rohan can really give all that good of an accounting of themselves. Meanwhile, Agalar and Y2K over here, two huge evil men armies going to be streaming into the settlement as well, and this is the problem here. For these forces, you can see now that Imladris are starting to make their way up the hill. They're starting to run into place, actually, with the God Helim also in there with their high mass arrows. Imladris with their quality and their pikes are going to be so necessary here, but really, if the defenders are going to win this, I think it is all going to come down to the Rohirrim cavalry. Can they be useful, or will they just be sort of stopped dead in their tracks? It will be interesting to see that as the battle unfolds, but I think I will make a small cut here while this grace period continues. Okay, well, at the risk of missing something, I am going to rejoin the action here, because it could start either on this front or on the outside of the settlement. And you can see that this is going to be a very hectic engagement right from the off, and I suppose Rohan never was in great danger of being rushed down by the attackers if this grace period was going to extend on for this long, because of course immediately, as the fireworks go off just outside my window, they have been reinforced by the vast majority of both Imladris and Rune's army. But you can see also on the outside of the settlement here, the Rohirrim cavalry has lined up, ready to engage the Dunlanders that have moved around onto this side as well. So Dunland and Rohan very much renewing their rivalry here. I think I know what the problem is as well with regards to the technical issues that I've been having lately as well. I think it's these fences. Because these are new additions, I think, to MISTRAND, aren't they? Just to sort of prevent units from going in through these gaps. Regardless, there's got to be a better way of making buildings impassable than this, if that is the case. It feels rather like bodging together the mains cable with a piece of electrical tape. I mean, surely there's got to be a better way to go about things than that. Because it looks a little bit naff as well when you've got these spiky fences around every building. I mean, you're not going to live in a house which is surrounded on all sides by sharpened stakes. But regardless, that's a problem for another time. As long as we don't crash, I'm not too concerned about it, but still. Here we go. So finally we're going to get going now, and the Elder Runway Archers are immediately going to start spraying the enemy down, and the Eastmark Riders are going to charge right into the front of this very large attacking force. The Dunman Spearmen and the Orc Fodder are at the front. The Eastmark Riders, the lowest of the Rohirrim cavalry, but off a frontal charge they should still do a decent amount of damage, especially with the support they're getting from the Elven Marksmen just in behind them. They do need to get out of there though, because these Smart Riders won't survive very long under scrutiny such as that. And there you can see immediately as well the Dunlanders taking a ton of damage, and immediately the defenders are going to be able to make pretty good use here of their Archer Corps, especially the Elven Archers, to be honest. I mean, Rohan, most of their archers are going to be on horseback. Meanwhile over here you can see Rohan did, I think, attempt to charge forward with their Sons of Yore, but that was always going to be a rather suicidal move. It must have looked cool, even though we missed it, but of course against Dunland, who have access to a lot of spears, and of course the crossbows, more worryingly, that's always going to be a problem. You can see here the Eastmark Horse Archers starting to spray down the Dunlanders. The Gwathlo Trackers will return fire. They won't be too good under archer fire themselves, though, and the Riders of the Fold are actually here as well, the stronger of the two mainline Rohirrim Horse Archers, and they're going to be able to get in here and do a lot of damage, and going after the right targets here. They're going after Snaga Skirmishers. They should probably avoid going after the Clansmen if they can, but yeah, the Snarg are probably the best choice. The Gwathlo Trackers are not a bad one either, just because of how easy they are to kill on an individual basis. And now you can see also the Rohirrim Cavalry charging forward yet again. But they are charging right into the jaws here of Dunland Spearman, which is going to be a real problem for them in the long run, which is why I'm not too convinced the Rohirrim Cavalry idea is going to work out too well here, as the Dunlanders charge across the open field and they're going to collide immediately with the Rohirrim lines. The Westmark Infantry and the Westmark Marshals making up this front line, a good combination of spear and axe, offense and defense, and against even the upgraded half-orc spear guard here will be repulsed very easily, I think, by the Rohirrim here, especially because of those axemen. They're going to be ideal against units like this, and with the backup of those elven skirmishers in particular, Dunland are not going to be having a good time here, but they will be absorbing casualties, and you can see here the Spears of Emondwyr are going to move forward. The Rohirrim will struggle considerably more against Mirkwood units, because Rohan definitely have more of an emphasis on armour piercing for their quality infantry, and that is not something that's going to be overly helpful against Mirkwood, so they're going to need to lean an awful lot on their skirmish power to try and stop Mirkwood. Just in general, to be honest with you, with the amount of numbers that are coming at them. The Ents are on their way forward. The Dragon's Breath cannon honestly needs to get into a position to shoot. It needs to start shooting now, because if it doesn't, the Ents are going to crash through this rather thin front line and start engaging it immediately. The Helm's Hammers are here, and they will shut down the Ents if given the chance, but I mean, this cannon is awfully close to the front line. That's a lot of Mordor forces. Rohan holding the line for the moment. The Riddermark skirmishers also doing their thing with their jabbies. Eldrenway Lancers trying to charge in, but again, like, cavalry is always going to be difficult to use in this sort of context because of the constrained nature of the map. But also, against factions like, Dunland are obviously not intended to really be used, but they've got a lot of anti-cavalry options. They may not have much quality at all, but they can still be used in that way. Dunland veterans, meanwhile, also being stopped dead in their tracks by the sentries. Veterans over there, again, in Eldrenway spears. This is a situation that Imladris are obviously going to rack up a ton of kills in with a combination of their archers and their infantry. That's 2 units of Godhelm as well, with their specialty projectiles as well. Dunland, meanwhile, Aguilar is continuing to move forward. He has an entire army against only a wing of Rohan, and let's not forget as well, Rohan do need to micro in the town centre as well, so Dunland can honestly probably get away here with just trying to swarm forwards and going about their business in that way. There's a lot of horse archers here which could just kite backwards, and I suppose that is the problem. I mean, what he really wants to do is just march around and surround the enemy there, and all Rohan need to do is try and delay them for as long as possible to try and win the battle inside the city itself. And again, this is only a Dunlander army, so these cavalry units could be able to charge in and break them. Dunland, I think, work much better when their cavalry, when their cannon fodder for the cavalry, I should say. Mirkwood moving in. Again, I'm really worried to zoom in too close on this fight, lest it crash on me yet again. Sharkan, though, trying to engage, but obviously when you're playing as Dunland and you're going up against a very well-funded Imladris army, your fate is always going to be just grinding into Imladris and trying to gum them up as much as possible, my word. That is not great. Huge bombards. Dragon's Breath. Damn, that is a lot of frame dropping. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised with the... yeah, we're going to have to zoom out, because that is definitely going to crash. Again, there is something with how that they've changed around some of the settlement edits in the patch, which has made the performance significantly worse. Even if it doesn't end up crashing, I feel as though there aren't any rangers here, are there? There may be. I mean, there could be a unit of rangers somewhere hidden amongst this mess trying to get some nice body-piercing volleys off. It wouldn't surprise me. But I don't think there are firing at the moment. And that aside, I shouldn't be forced to zoom out this far. And I think it is. It's got to be like fences and stuff like that, because there are so many of these things on the map. Trying to stop people from moving through the buildings, but... yeah. Oh man, that's bad. The Narim, is it? With their fiery projectiles as well? Like, I think if this doesn't show that the game is crying, that it's finally buckling at the seams with all the stuff that's been added in Reforged, I don't know what will. Meanwhile, Riddermark cavalry charging in, Eastmark horse archers also coming in. Getting in there to the Gwathlo trackers. A decent charge. Nothing too devastating, though, as you would expect from horse archers. Dunland continuing to put the pressure on, and ultimately Dunland should, eventually they're going to be able to force Rohan into full retreat at this rate. You can see here that Rohan are actually pulling their cavalry way off over here, presumably to try and say to Dunland, you know what, you can go through, just be prepared for the fact that I'm going to charge into the rear of your army later on with my cavalry, so you better keep enough back in reserve that isn't a problem for you. Greenway Guards are still archers, they're still trying to force the rest of the Rohirrim cavalry that is still over here back. Most of Rohan's lower end cavalry, it must be said. Meanwhile, within the city itself, the game is... it wants to crash, I can feel it coming. Meanwhile, Rune have also moved forward. Ugh, man. Well, I mean, they have pushed forward the attackers here. You can see that Mordor have sort of led the way, rather, through the initial Rohirrim line, but you can see here almost the full extent of the runic infantry has come forward. to halt this advance in its tracks. You can also see there that the Dragon's Breath cannons were abandoned. I think it was rather foolhardy of the runic player, to be honest with you, to try and push them that close. Even if they were in position, they would have been shot by the Mirkwood archers immediately. This would have been a good place to put it. Just enough elevation to get sort of direct downward shots into this front line. Meanwhile, back here you can see that that Troll Catapult also going to be causing havoc, but also havoc amongst their own men. They're getting a decent amount of friendly fire there. You can also see the Eldarenway Lancers sort of delving deep into the attacking lines. Oof, yeah, I can't zoom in yet. Elders of the Elven King sort of launching their arrows to the moon and back. But they should at least land on the Imladris portion of the line. The problem for the attackers, though, is over here. They're making good progress over on the other side, because that's where most of their decent units are. But over here, it must be said that Dunland were well and truly destroyed by Imladris. With some Mirkwood units coming over here, they are kind of making some headway, but ultimately Imladris are going to be able to stand up to this sort of pressure indefinitely, to be honest with you, especially with the Dragon Knights also charging in there, getting into the Black Vault. I mean, it is carnage. So it isn't really too surprising that the frames are dropping slightly, but yeah, the Nar Rim are causing the frames to drop, which is interesting. Not something I expected to happen, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, see back here the Rohirrim now getting in and amongst some of the Dunlanders that are still... Well, actually, that's a Mordor unit there. But also, perhaps more interestingly, he has managed to cycle his cavalry all the way around. Can Master Blaster make good use of the cavalry he's managed to smuggle around to this side of the map? And can he charge into the absolutely massive army which is over here? I mean, he's having to take the long way around. You can see that Rudauer Y2K86 does have quite a lot of his army stationed over here. He looks to be the final wave, really. But also units like the Sindar of the Girdle are not going to make Rohan's job very easy at all, but perhaps focused a little bit too much on the front line here, because I don't think he notices this huge cavalry force coming in, absolutely dominating the Rudauer swordsmen and axemen over here. This is an engagement I can actually zoom in a little bit more on. Aerod of Aldbug over there also charging in more to the Rudauer axemen, the Riders of the Fold using their arrows as well. And Y2K86 has surely got to turn around and realise what's happening now. You can see that a lot of his forces are actually starting to move forward, but he managed to get 2 or 3 good charges off there before Rudauer even started to react here. A lot of good arrows also being loosed into the Ferodrum. Javelin's definitely a target you want to go after. They may have multiple HP, but they're relatively lightly armoured and unshielded for the kind of unit that they are. Riders of the Fold, meanwhile, trying to shoot the Sindar of the Girdle. Again, very similar story here. They are multiple HP, but unshielded, relatively lightly armoured. If you can take away their hit points, Horse Archers are pretty ideal for dealing with them, just like the rest of the Mirkwood cavalry. Meanwhile, there isn't really anything left that Rohan has now. The Adunheim Lancers were a very welcome sight for this flanking force from Dunland. Aguilar will now be able to surround the Imladris section of the front line within the city, so we shall see if that proves to be a significant factor. Looks almost like mustard gas coming up from the units in this sort of lighting. Jesus, those Nar Rim really playing havoc with my frames. Down over here, we can see that Dunland... Actually, no, this isn't Dunland. This is the Elder Palace Guard. The Elven King's Palace Guard, though, they've been sent into a fight that they cannot win. They've been sent all on their lonesome into a pretty much full Eldarenway front line, and the units that aren't Eldarenway are even higher tier, so they may be really, really strong, but they're not strong enough for this. Ooh, no, please, don't crash. It's a very gnarly looking engagement over there. Rune are actually pushing in. I mean, you can see now that the attackers are being pushed back. The Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen also moving forward, but my question would be, can the defenders sustain that sort of thing? Because the attackers have got way, way more manpower to burn than the defenders. And also, a lot of the defending army being made up of cavalry means that they will live and die based on how well Rohan can use their cavalry, because there's no way Rune and Imladris can defeat 5 armies all by themselves, infantry-wise, and most of Rohan's infantry is already gone by the looks of things. Another really nice charge there into the Rudauer swordsman from the Sons of Yule. The Rohirrim cavalry kind of being forced backwards by Y2K's army, but a lot of damage being taken by that particular Rudauer army. None of it's too bad. There's a lot of routing Mordor force as well, a lot of routing Dunlanders, to be honest with you. It is a very hectic match, to give it its due. It's definitely living up to its billing as a chaotic fight. As soon as those Nar Rim run out of ammunition, perhaps I can actually zoom in and see how Rune are getting on up close and personal like, because it looks like they're having a pretty decent go of it so far. I would question the fact of whether or not they have enough manpower. They and Imladris have done a really very good job so far, and it may be that they can continue to hold on from the front, but the problem is they're going to be surrounded pretty soon by another, albeit depleted, Dunland army from the rear, and they've still got units like Black Walls left alive, they've still got crossbows as well, and those Greenway Guards will be a very integral part of their chances in this fight. You can see now that Rohan moving what's left of their cavalry back, having already played havoc with the Rudar forces over here. Were these fences in this map before? I'm in two minds about it. I really am not sure. Meanwhile, Aerith of Aldberg still causing chaos in and amongst their lines, charging into the Rudar swordsmen yet again. A good charge, but now they are going to be made to pay for that charge, because immediately the Sindar of the Girdle are going to respond to that. And the Sindar of the Girdle are one of the most difficult cavalry units to fight, unit to unit, on horseback. They really are so difficult to kill because they have a bonus against cavalry, they are spear cavalry themselves, but also really, really high melee defense. Ridiculous amount of melee defense, really. But that's what you would expect from the elves, and of course they do suffer for that in the fact that they have lower armour. Let's be a little bit more careful of how close we get to the Nar Rim. Their fire arrows are actually purely cosmetic, I think. Those fire arrows coming in from those other units, though, I mean, if you look at like the splash fire effects, they're the cosmetic ones. And they don't actually do the same thing as fire arrows, they're just for looks. So they won't apply a morale debuff, but still, that's a lot of forces are running from the front line here, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, still the Aerith of Aldberg continue to move through, and I have to say, the cavalry has been used effectively so far, which is a good sign. I mean, that was always going to be the litmus test of how well the defenders were going to do here. The Sindar of the Girdle here, their hit points are well and truly gone at this point, because when last we looked at them they were relatively full health. Now they're almost completely gone because of the Riders of the Fold were shooting at them. Not good for them. Meanwhile, this Dunland army is still very stretched out. They need to start hot-footing it, I think. There are more Rohirrim horsemen here at the top of the hill, but the... no, please. Not more Nar Rim. They're causing even more frame drops than Rangers do, which is absolutely insane. But again, the attacking advisor... oh no. Please don't crash. The frames are absolutely dying because that general was right in and amongst where the frames are at their worst. God damn, look at that. Yeah, I mean... something is not right, I think it's fair to say, with the game at this moment in time. Like, something in the way of stability has been lost with all the things that have been added. There goes another general, so we'll have to bear with the game while it judders through that. But I mean, with my recording and sort of how I juice the game, as it were, I'm always going to be the one at the sharpest end of this. But at least, at the very least, this kind of shows that if they push it much further, general players, I think, are also going to be affected by this sort of thing. I don't know. I don't really know the way that would fix that, to be honest with you. Because something's not right. Like, I've been able to sort of mitigate the crashing to a certain extent, and if not for the patch that Kuro gave me, and if not for a couple of the other things that I've done to try and help out with that, it would have crashed already, long ago. But something isn't right, like I said. Like, there's got to be something that can be done. Because again, like, it's not so bad if it's just me having to put up with crashes while I'm recording, but the next step on from this would be players having to deal with it, and if players have to deal with it, people stop playing the game. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's perhaps a discussion that can be had another time, but here we can see the Greenway Guards getting charged by Riders of the Fold, but of course they are only horse archers, so they're not really going to be up to too much off the charge. And as if that wasn't enough, the Greenway Guards are the one unit of genuine quality that Dunland have on foot, in addition, I suppose, to the Black Walls. But the Greenway Guards, of course, heavily armoured. Those spears as well, and of course crossbows, which are always going to be good at scything through charging cavalry units. But the Riders of the Fold getting off relatively unscathed there, all things considered. Right, let's sort of get a little bit closer to this fight now and see... oh no. What is going on there? What is causing that frame drop in this section of the map? Are there Rangers? Axe throwers, Dunman hunters. Wathlow trackers, because the frame rate is actually fairly smooth everywhere else, but as soon as we get close to here, it just immediately starts to drop. So I can only apologise to Armed Paladin and to Total War number 1, whose engagement is happening almost entirely here with their infantry. But they're doing very well. They're continuing to push back against this attack. I wonder how long that's going to last. I mean, they should be able to do it for the time being, but the problem is going to come, you know, their army is going to be incredibly depleted. Now, here we go again. Another general. That elf there has got no head. He's just a living suit of armour. I mean, it's cool to see the golden armour of the Elder Enway and the runic soldiers sort of fighting side by side. We've got plenty of time to admire it as the game shits itself at the sight of something in there. I don't know what's causing that lag. Meanwhile, Rise of the Fold charging out yet again. Let's go and see what's happening over on this side as I try and completely dodge the danger zone. Yeah, Dunland over here are sort of trying to get into position, but the problem they have, of course, is the fact that they're still being kited by Rohan's cavalry. Rohan's army at this point, of course, is very heavily depleted. Into the final 10,000 frames, though, and you can see here that, yeah, I mean, the attackers are losing, but only by 2%, and of course it does tend to be in the late game when the attackers start to pull these engagements back. Meanwhile, here goes one of the 2 units of the Red Shields charging into the Dunman Spearmen. And if they can cycle charge in and out quickly before the spears have a chance to poke through too many of the cavalry, this will be worthwhile, because they do need to do something to try and make a dent in the manpower that the attackers still have. The advantage of bringing the Dunland armies is that you are forced into bringing huge armies based on numbers, because you simply don't have a choice. You don't have high quality units, other than the Greenway Guards and the Blackwolds on foot, and the Greenway Sentries on horseback, but they're not really the same sort of thing as the kind of quality that other factions have. What is going on here? Like, what is...
If we continue like this, we will smash the...
I don't understand. Meanwhile, let's see here. Troll Caspot moving forward yet again. Greenway Guards trying to get into position. I don't think there's anything really left back here from a Rohirrim perspective. Indeed, there isn't. But a lot of damage was done. A very worthwhile venture from Master Blaster. Look at all these routing units as well. I mean, that is the downside to having units as large as this. Unfortunately, I do feel that, well, actually, no. We will actually be able to see this engagement just fine now, because the lag over there, the battle has actually been progressing, and we can now actually zoom in on it. So we can see the Balchol Sapphire Bladesman and the Dragon's Wrath Crossman, the 2 high-tier runic skirmishers charging into melee, both of them very accomplished in melee, of course, and then you can see also the Carmel's Dragon Knights are still in very fine health, and that is a real problem for the attackers over here. Because if the Dragon Knights are allowed to continue charging, I don't see how the attackers can win this, to be honest with you. If the Dragon Knights are looked after, because Knights are so devastating, they can finish all these units off. Not if they just get up close and personal with the Greenway Guards for too long, though. Probably the last place they want to be honest with you. First Marshal's Bodyguard still alive as well. Multiple HP Lancers. Not quite as devastating as the Cardinal's Dragon Knights, but still a real problem here. The rest of the Runic and Imladris forces are going to turn right around and I think try and engage Dunland, and needless to say, I don't think Dunland will fancy their chances in that particular engagement. Gwathlow trackers, what are they going to do? Get charged by First Marshal's Bodyguard, I think. As First Marshal's Bodyguard are feeling so confident they're just going to walk into melee. There's still some Imladris Guardians getting in and amongst the Gwathlow trackers as well. Now they're going to charge in, and even as close as they were, that's going to be enough to rout them. Rudar Marksman trying to shoot as well, but I mean, I think we can see here a good example brewing of how quality can defeat quantity. Obviously, with the rules of engagement being that the attackers had to hold back and not just swamp Rohan right at the start, clearly, did help them out and did allow the defenders to set up just as they wanted. But even so, it was an awful lot of men they had to carve their way through in this fight. And I think a combination of the really nicely balanced runic front line, like a really high quality runic front line with the Imladris units as well, in addition to the really nice elven archers, and of course the Rohirrim cavalry. They were all used very nicely in tandem with one another. There goes the Rudar general. Actually no, that's the Dunland general, isn't it? So I guess he just uses the same model. Interesting. There are the Dragon Knights. Again, most of the defending army is now going to turn around and try and face off against Dunland. We're just going to see the clean-up over here as well. The Rudar Marksmen broken and fighting to the death as the First Marshal's Bodyguard pulling out those nice swords that they have. The sort of Viking or Saxon styled swords. I do like that style of sword quite a lot. In conjunction with a nice round shield. Meanwhile, over on this side, as we avoid the problematic section of the map, we can see. Oh dear! I mean, we're kind of avoiding it if we go any. Yeah. So this is the limit for the fight. Unfortunately for us, it appears as though they are going to choose this area of the map to fight in, rather than on this hill. Rise of the Fold charging in. They're going to try and go after the Greenway Guards, but their charge was partially broken up by the Dunman Spearmen. But I don't see how Agalar can win this all on his own. He's playing as Dunland, which is always going to be an issue. He does have crossbows. He has some Coldfell Maidens from Y2K as well, but I don't know. Medicell Guard, who only have 5 left. I'm sure we weren't able to zoom in on it for really any section of the fight. But I'm sure the Medicell Guard were able to really do a lot of damage with their javelins. It's just how they roll. Again, really nice unit for Rohan. Dunman Spearmen are in there as well. Ooh. Coldfell Maidens. Yeah, this cavalry isn't really going to be able to do the same sort of thing that the Rohirrim cavalry has done throughout this fight so far. Absolutely devastating. Javelins being thrown. Chasing off the red shields. There's still another unit down here, you know. I think this cavalry is trying to finish it off, but what is it, I wonder? Catapults. What is this? It says there's still an arrow on the radar. Well, regardless, Rise of the Fold are routing off. There isn't really anything else, so we are now into the final phase of this fight. Ooh. No, please. We've had to watch most of this fight from a zoomed out perspective on a dark background, which frankly isn't ideal, but I mean, it's better than nothing, I suppose. It's certainly better than a crash. First Marshal's Bodyguard cycling back out. The fact that Rohan still have any cavalry left alive at all, considering the meat grinders they've been going through, is impressive in its own way, especially considering the likes of Dunland are really, really effective at shutting down cavalry. If there's one thing they can do, it's deal with cavalry. Are there rangers somewhere? More Nar-Rim firing away? Wathlo trackers? Ooh boy. Scion Rim ambling their way forwards. I mean, we're getting pushed ever further backwards. I don't know about Rudar and Dunland. I'm being pushed further backwards by the defenders at this rate. A vicious attack on my frames indeed. More Black Wolves moving forward. I mean, 123 Black Wolves at this late stage of the game is a fairly significant thing to try and overcome if you don't have any significant range powers. But by the looks of things, they still have E-Strong crossbows, which are going to be just the sort of thing that they need. Greenway Guards are moving backwards. Here come the Black Wolves now with their big granite axes. Oh man, I really don't understand it. I don't know how to explain it, to be honest with you. Well, I mean, to be fair, the game has not let me down so far, touch wood. Well, the Greenway Guards trying to do their thing, trying to use those mighty bolts to their advantage, and they could, you know, if they can continue to force this kind of engagement where the defenders are being forced and funneled in to this engagement, the Dunland crossbows could be the difference between victory and defeat here, because in melee they're not going to stand a chance. There are still Imladris units left alive, and what Rune have left is substantial. They have Scion Rim, they have Sapphire Bladesmen. Even the Nar-Rim are in big enough numbers that it's going to be a problem. There are the Trollshire Axeros, and I mean, that is another really important unit to have at this stage in the battle. Again, we can't zoom in on them because the game's crying. But the Trollshire Axeros is able to get a perfect shot, really, into that big blob. And with their really high base damage, units like the Balchor Sapphire Bladesmen are really going to be suffering in there. Because I can't imagine they have any HP left, really. There's the Imladris General gone. There's a huge volley of thrown axes as well. I mean, the Scion Rim with their heavier armour and their shields will stand up to that sort of punishment a little bit better. But can the attackers still pull this out? It would be very impressive if they were able to do so, to be honest with you, considering the beating they took. But I mean, I still question whether they can shut down a unit like the Dragon Knights at this stage. E-Strong crossbows. Because eventually they're going to run out of ammunition, and then they're just going to have to muck in melee, and stuff like the Trollshire Axe Throwers are not really going to offer a great deal there. Elder Runway Spearmen moving over here. getting into the Greenway Guards, and they're going to try and then move on to shut down these Guatlo trackers. The attackers at this point trying to make absolute maximum use of their skirmishers. Strong crossbows now joining the fray as well. Again, I would zoom in, but as soon as we get close, you can see what happens to the game. It really doesn't like it. Victory seems certain for the Blackwolds. Really trying to carry the team now. The Greenway Guards are also shooting away. Still a few arrows coming in from what's left of the defenders as well. I mean, to be fair, it's been a very competitive game. I mean, I feel as though the technical issues have somewhat overshadowed a game which has honestly been of the highest quality, with some unconventional tactics and compositions as well. Certainly from the defenders, the way that Imladris laid out their army, and especially Rohan, was not what you would normally expect. And of course, whenever you've got Dunlander armies, it's always going to be unconventional for the attackers, because Dunlander are not a balanced faction. You essentially go in with a handicap. Yeah, but I mean, they don't really have much left back there, do they? Just 12 Nar Rim trying to shoot into the Greenway Guards. They're going to have very limited impact on a heavily armoured and shielded unit like them. Yeah, but the Blackwolds now, defeat seems certain. There's still the matter of the Carmel's Dragon Knights. Yeah, the defenders should go on to win this, but I mean, it was a brave rally in the late game, considering it was mainly just a battered and bruised Dunland army that tried to make something happen here. But I think MISTRAND is going to remain in the hands of the good guys. I guess Rune defected, and Mirkwood also defected. It's a bit of a weird scenario, but that's what we're working with. And again, it's I don't know is it a unit that's causing it? Because it's almost like it's the same place that it's starting to lag every time. So it's not as if it's like projectiles that are going in there which are causing it. So it must not have been the Nar Rim either. Weird, absolutely bizarre. Meanwhile, Elder Enway Spearman. What's going on back over here? There's one Greenway Guard. This absolute champion, who is going to just stand his ground. He's going to stand there confidently reloading his crossbow. He's going to try and claim a few more elf heads before he's done. Yeah, not good. Not good for the attackers. Again, units like Trollshaw Axe Throwers, not the sort of things you want to be relying on in the late game unless you know that you're going to have a huge numbers advantage. Again, I've been on the receiving end of a Trollshaw Axe Thrower ambush, and I've also pulled some off. But in this sort of situation, it's not going to be enough, unfortunately. The quality has just swung too far against the attackers. And the defender's going to be able to win. Again, a battle of high quality, absolute madness here in the middle. So much madness that the game just couldn't handle it. But a lot of death there. Rohan with the cavalry play was very important throughout the battle, doing a lot of damage. Like, they did a ton of damage to Y2K before he even reacted, and also even more to the other players as well, just continuing to charge in. Very, very impressive. But also, I think the combination of Rune and Imladris here in the middle, while we didn't get to see an awful lot of it because of the technical issues, you can tell just from the way that the fight was progressing from afar what was happening. You had the skirmish power and the elite infantry of the elves combined with the really well-balanced, more numerous and armour-piercing front line of Rune, and those offset one another brilliantly. And that was without the cannon. The cannon did nothing in this fight, so that was a huge amount of money pretty much down the drain. And I think this battle probably does go to show how much of a handicap Dunland can be, because Dunland brought to the table a lot of lower-end units, which ultimately, when you're going up against units like Imladris have, that is not what you need. Like, Dunman Spearmen are not the answer to an Elder Enway shield wall. But still, I mean, it's the novelty of playing as Dunland, I suppose. I'd love to be able to zoom in, but I mean, it's like clockwork. As soon as I cross over a certain point, it just goes nah. What about over here? Can we have a look over? Nope, that's even worse. Oh boy. Yep. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of this, to be honest with you. Like, I don't even know what the problem would be, but I mean, like I said, this probably acts as a pretty good warning sign, to be honest with you. You know, because, I mean, like I said, it's not really too much of a problem if I'm having these issues, because obviously I've got a recording software running, I'm sort of juicing the graphics as far as I can, but it is kind of the warning that if it gets much worse, it's going to start affecting players, I think. And then that's a real problem, because players who are sort of trying to sort of give up a good chunk of their day and their spare time to actually play this game and try and relax and enjoy themselves, if they have to put up with this sort of thing, they will stop playing it. Which is a worrying thing to think, to be honest with you. I feel as though maybe the hotfix or hotfixes maybe focus a little bit less on all new additions and just trying to shore up the technical fidelity of the game as it stands. Finally we're able to zoom in. Although I say that, oh no, zoom out, abort. Never mind. I was wrong. Greenway guards in here. Camel's Dragon Knights continuing to charge in and out, and yeah, it's just the Greenway guards left alive at this point. A brave effort though, as we have a look at the kill scores. A 5% differential is very, very good, especially considering it's in favour of 3 defenders against 5 attackers. That is not usually the kind of swing that you see in this kind of situation, especially with the army compositions brawl. Like a Rohirrim army of this sort against that many attackers is usually the sort of thing which will get you killed. But in this case, not a bit of it. Rune are the most healthy army still alive, with a few units of Loke. Some Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. Eastron crossbows as well being committed right at the end, as well as the Dragon Knights, of course. Rohan very much on their last legs with just a few First Marshal's bodyguard. And Imladris also don't have a huge amount left. They've got some Elder Runway Spearmen in there. A couple of units of them, but apart from that, nothing really. Some Medicel Guard are up here as well, 2 of them still alive. There goes the final general, getting charged down by Theoden himself there, alongside his unlikely ally in the Nazgul Khamul. But there you have it. Again, a bit of a weird one, because while the battle itself was of high quality, I think it's fair to say, it was mired in technical issues. Very, very weird. And there may be reasons for this, like there may be reasonable reasons, like this map, maybe it was edited in some way and something's been added that causes that. It may just be the nature of the match itself and how chaotic it was, and maybe, you know, it's not every day you see a match like this. But I do feel as though I wouldn't be getting technical issues of this magnitude if there wasn't some underlying reason to it. And again, it's only on either completely new settlements or settlements that have been edited in some way, which does lead me to believe that there are a couple of assets in particular which are the problem, which is why I sort of pointed out the fences. Because, I mean, it's not going to be trees on a map like this. I mean, look at it, it's like a wasteland. I mean, there's palm trees, I suppose, but other than that. But anyway, enough of my negative waves. We're going to talk about the match itself, because it was a high-quality match, and big thank you to Ulk for sending it to me. I feel as though you have to give the MVP to Rohan, not because of the huge amount of kills they got, but because they used their cavalry brilliantly. That is how you use your cavalry in a defensive siege. It won't always go that way. I do feel as though the attackers kind of made it easier for Rohan than it needed to be in some cases by allowing their cavalry to just run over whole sections of their army. But having said that, you know, you still need to execute on that, and Rohan did that. Rune and Imladris work very, very well in tandem, and I feel as though that is reflected in the fact they got almost like, you know, very similar kill counts. Imladris in the supporting role, Rune taking point. Let's have a look at what did the damage for Mordor. Obviously less in terms of kills for the attacking armies, but still a few standouts. 3 units breaking 100. Orc Javelins, not too surprising. Javelins tend to do very well. The Nazgul as well, they must have been alive on the front line for a decent amount of time to be able to do that. Obviously, you know, they can be a real pain when they're in and amongst a horde because they're so difficult to kill individually, and when they've got a lot of meat shields around them, just by sheer attrition they can pick up a lot of kills. But the Olag High just about beaten them out by 1. The Olag High, of course, are much more flash in the pan. They're able to do their killing in a much more spectacular fashion, but they're also easier to shut down. And also you can't sort of sneak them into a front line like you can with the Nazgul. The Olag High definitely stick out like a sore thumb. So yeah, very high quality game, but again, I'm not really sure what to make of the technical issues that the game is suffering for me. And again, it is worth saying that these issues, it didn't crash this time, which is good. And again, I feel as though that is a result of the changes that I've made behind the scenes. Big thank you to Kuro for the main aspect of that being a patch which allows me to use 4 cores instead of 2. I think that must have made a relatively big difference. However, like I said, it isn't too much of a step, I think, before these issues cease to just affect me and potentially other content creators as well. I'm not really sure how it's affected them. I feel as though because of the shaders I use, I'm probably the first one that's likely to get hit by this sort of thing. But I do feel as though it wouldn't take too much more in the way of technical issues and sort of pushing the game too far before other content creators start experiencing these issues, and then obviously it's not too long before players start experiencing this issue, and that would be a real problem. So again, I'm not as frustrated by it anymore because I can still record stuff. I can still get content out. I will start to get more frustrated by it if the quality of my videos is compromised on a regular basis in the way that this particular battle was, because then the quality of my channel goes down as a result, and then less people will find it entertaining, which is obviously a big problem for me. But it's not such a problem if this just happens every now and then. But it is a problem if the greater community starts to experience these problems as well, because then less people will play the game, which would be a crying shame considering all the work that has gone into this game. We shall see. I'd be interested to see how Silmarillion, I mean, just based on the fact that Silmarillion has got it's sort of building up a game from scratch, and I feel as though they probably won't have these issues quite so much. But it would be interesting to see. I mean, again, I'm not really sure. I'm not a developer, so I'm not really sure what this would be. But I suppose you can sort of picture me and the issues that I've had as sort of an early warning sign for saying, if it gets too much worse, it's going to start affecting the general playing public, as it were. And it's not such a problem if it's me. Like I said, that can be absorbed, but it is a problem if everyone has to experience these sort of issues. But regardless, it was still a good battle, even if we weren't able to enjoy it in the up-close and personal fashion that would have been slightly more entertaining. Big thank you to all. Big thank you to all the players that were a part of it. As for the next battle, I suppose it is about time that I did try to do the Witch King's Sanctum, because if there was going to be not only technical issues, but the crashing was to return, I feel as though it would be on that map there. So I will have a little look, I think, at that map in the near future. That will probably be the next one. If not, I do have a couple of others. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do next. It will probably be that one though. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.